Shalom, shalom, mishpocha. Welcome to another edition of Ray Bash's Ramblings. I'm your host, Rabbi Yehuda ben Shomer. In my latest rant, I tackled kindling a fire on the Sabbath somewhat, and usually the next step in that parade of accusations are usually dealing with somebody traveling on the Sabbath, meaning my context is actually starting your car and traveling to a synagogue, because most people don't live in walking distance to a synagogue or even near a Jewish community, and some people have to drive 20, 30 minutes away, an hour, 2 hours away to attend a Sabbath service. And they're like, well, does this break the prohibition of traveling on Shabbat according to the commandments? As many of you know, that the Orthodox community have were able to sort of bend the rules, so to speak, about traveling on the Sabbath by putting a special wire that runs all throughout their community, which fences them in, which makes them able to travel within that fenced-in area, just differentiated just by simple posts and lines, almost like power lines almost, and they can travel within their community without breaking the Sabbath. But anyway, going back to what I was talking about, traveling an hour or more to attend the Sabbath service, is that breaking the Sabbath? Well, I tackled the kindling the fire part regarding starting a car. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Starting a car does not technically kindle a fire. It requires no labor. And the prohibition of traveling on Shabbat, I think, entails more of a prohibition against laboring on Shabbat, because back then they didn't have automobiles. They had donkeys, camels, horses, and to travel on the Sabbath any distance that exceeds a walking distance, you would have to saddle your animal, harness your animal, feed your animal, pack the animal, make sure everything's all set. And you know what? When you add all that in, that's labor. That's work. And I think so the prohibition was more of, if you know that you're going to be out of town during the Sabbath, make sure that you rest before the Sabbath near a Jewish community to where you can attend a synagogue, instead of packing your animal, feeding your animal, grooming your animal, saddling your animal, just so you can travel to another place where there is a synagogue. It's totally different nowadays. Unless you're Amish, I'm sure you don't travel using a donkey, a camel, or a horse, or what have you. Now, a bike would be a prohibition because that's exercise and that does require labor, if you're traveling a lengthy distance, but as far as jumping in the car to travel an hour or more for a Shabbat service is not labor. Now, if you have to travel in excess over an hour, I would suggest that you only, go to that particular synagogue maybe once a month, because doing this week to week, it does wear on you. Traveling can become tiring and laborious in that context, but just going once a week, once a month, if you're traveling over a distance exceeding an hour, I would suggest you just, go once a month. But I went to a synagogue one time where the closest Torah-observant synagogue near me, Netzari synagogue, was an hour's drive, and I gladly drove that hour each Sabbath and did not feel conviction or like I was breaking the Sabbath or any way, shape, or form, because it would be a greater sin for me to stay home and to not go to synagogue, miss out on fellowshipping with other like-minded believers, missing out on Torah teachings that edify and feed and build up my spirit, and miss out on all those blessings. Because I can't get those blessings necessarily at home by myself. So, if anybody has to travel to a synagogue on the Sabbath, don't let anybody point a finger at you or, try to convict you or make you feel bad in any way, shape, or form. Go ahead and do it, because it'll be a greater blessing and greater asset to your life than not traveling on Shabbat. Because you won't be reaping those blessings and those benefits. So I know sometimes that comes up in questions. A lot of people ask me. So that's my take on it, and that would be my advice to you. So if anybody is in this kind of situation, I hope this really helps. Traveling on Shabbat was more really concerned not necessarily of traveling in and of itself, but the work involved in traveling is what was more of the matter regarding that mitzvot and the prohibition against traveling on Shabbat. So we'll see you guys later. Shalom and Shavua Tov. Bye bye.